now a Democratic runoff between Spencer Wetmore and Carol Temple for South Carolina House District 115, which covers James Island, Folly Beach, and of course, Kiel and Seabrook. Today, I speak exclusively with Carol Temple for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Carol Temple, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thanks, Quintin. I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad you got my name right this time.
As always. Well, let me jump right into it because you posted this on your Facebook page on June 10th. You said this quote, "The results are in. I want to thank all of my supporters who contributed their time, talents, and treasure to help me campaign virtually and come in first place." But Carol, if you came in first place, why are you in a runoff?
Well, here's the thing. In South Carolina law, at least for the state races, the winning candidate has to come in with 50% of the vote plus one. So this time with three of us in the runoff, or three of us in the primary, it's really hard for one candidate to come in with the 50% plus one. So when that happens, then the law is such that the top two candidates have to go into a runoff. And so that runoff is tomorrow, June 23rd. So that's what happened with that. Yeah. Some of the races, like for city council and so on, those I believe can be majority. And there's a lot being said now. You know, these runoff races get very expensive for the candidate and also for the taxpayer. So there is a lot of discussion about having rank order voting so that in a case like this, it would have been, okay, as a voter, you would have said, all right, my first choice is this person, my second choice is the next person, and chances are that then one of the candidates would have gotten the 50% plus one. Yeah, so that's some kind of election reform that is out there being discussed.
Why didn't Carol Temple get 50 plus one?
Well, Carol Temple got 49% in the last election. Right. I just think that it was a long race, and I think we had three strong candidates out there. Eileen and I began our campaigns like early fall, and then Spencer's campaign came in mid-March. So, you know, it just changes the dynamics of things. I think voters are like, oh, now I have three choices. So, you know, if you're interested in voting, you're going to explore your options. So I think, you know, I came in first and have a lot of support going into this runoff, which I'm very thankful for.
What are the dynamics when it comes to this runoff?
I'm not sure what you mean by dynamics, but I think it's important that voters know the candidate well, and I feel like I have a good reputation and a lot of awareness in the community. I'm very encouraged by the endorsements I've received from people who are within the county who know the work, you know, that I've done, and can speak to the work that I've done and the expertise and the skills, you know, that I have a lot of good donation supports that are from, you know, people. The amounts of my donations are on the low side, but they're mighty and many of them. So I think those are some of the dynamics. And I think one of the important issues that as I talk with voters virtually. I mean, this is an interesting campaign because we're not able to go to events. We're not able to go, you know, door to door and actually, you know, speak with people. So we're reaching out through email and Facebook, and, you know, I've never done so many videos in my life, trying to reach people and talk with them. And the issue that comes up the most is that I'm an educator and I have a deep understanding of how schools can be excellent And people are they want to see an educator in the State House. That I think is the biggest dynamic, is like, we don't have educators in the State House. And this is the one opportunity we have. You know, teachers and principals with education background, while you're working, you can't do this kind of work. So I think that's a really important issue, and people seem to really resonate on that.
You talk about awareness. What are you aware now when it comes to the issues of House District 115?
Well, you know, I did a survey of my constituents, and you know, they've told me, and I've done videos on the issues that education and the environment on a scale of 1 to 5. Both of those came in at like 4.8, and healthcare. I am aware of, you know, interests that our community has. We have a lot of interest in the environment in terms of flooding. Most recently, I went to one of the, I guess you'd call it a forum that the developer of an area that is very sensitive to flooding was having. And it was amazing. It was I guess, George, it was like a Friday morning, and it was out at the poorhouse. And there must have been 60 people there who were speaking up and concerned that building is going on in this floodplain, and that there are new regulations coming into place July 1 from the city that will influence the development. So, you know, when you're out and about in the community and you're talking to people, you become aware of what the issues are in the area. And everybody here on James Island, this is where all the schools are. Everyone wants a good education for their children. So that, I think those are two, you know, the environment and the education are really, really important.
And I'm going to talk to you about that more in depth in just a few seconds. But you obviously talk about those regulations. Which ones are obviously ideal for James Island right now?
You mean regulations about flooding?
Yes, ma'am. You just mentioned it.
Yeah, okay. Well, the regulations that people want the developers and the zoning commissions to pay attention to are, you know, what are the floodplains? Have we adequately identified the wetlands and the floodplains? And they don't want to have allow what they call fill and build, where you can raise the level of the land, build your house or business, and then the water drainage goes off into the, you know, into the neighbors' yards. People, I don't know that so much this is a regulation, but this is a function of how the municipalities and the state work together. The drainage dishes, you know, out here on James Island, we, I call us the camouflage island, in the sense that we have, you know, different governmental agencies. So, for example, the ditch in front of my house could be, you know, the responsibility of the city, and the ditch in my neighbor's yard is the town. And then, you know, not right here where I am, but in some other areas of James Island, it could be the county. And so all those municipalities need to really be working together, because we are just one island.
And, you know, obviously a big topic in this race is all about home rules. Where is Carol Tempel on this issue?
Well, I think, you know, when we have municipalities and council members and mayors that are elected by the people, then I think that when those groups have a concern about an issue that really impacts their area, they should have a lot of influence on that. So I do support home rule.
And, you know, earlier you talked about, obviously, you know, the environment. And obviously there's a big talk about no offshore drilling. And I know that you talked to the Island News, if I'm not mistaken, a couple of years ago. And you said this quote, For the amount of oil geologists think is out there, we don't need to be drilling. We already have enough to ship oil overseas. The infrastructure that would go onto our shores to support what is going on off our shores would ruin our coasts. We need to be moving towards renewable sources. What renewable sources would be ideal for 115, and where should that infrastructure come from?
Okay, well, the renewable resources that we can do are one of the things we can do is solar energy. And if as I run around the island, I am really impressed by the number of houses that are putting solar panels on their rooftops. When you have subdivisions that are being built, which really didn't have a lot of tree cover, then you find that solar panels work really well. Like in our house, we would love to have solar panels, but we have a house that was built in 1947, and we're surrounded by a lot of big oaks that shade our house, and our house was built with eaves to keep the sun out in the summer. So solar panels aren't a reality for us right now unless we get a hurricane that takes out some of our big trees. But that's a really big part, and the state can provide some incentives there for more solar energy. And then we do live in a fairly windy area, so you could identify places where wind energy could be a possibility.
And obviously, what other ideas would you come up with when it comes to that?
Well, I mean, another thing is I'm working with a project right now on biofuels,
Right.
and the researcher has developed a variety of a sweet potato that produces as much energy in 1 acre, biofuel energy in 1 acre, as 5 acres of corn.
Right.
So, we need to find ways to get that kind of research going. And my understanding from working with the researcher is that these sweet potatoes grow really well in the sandy soils of South Carolina, and would be especially good in the I-95 corridor, would give farmers another crop, but that takes infrastructure and some support. And so I'm really encouraged by the work she's doing. We just have to get the attention of some federal people to help with grants to move that forward.
And how will you move forward that project by working with United States Representative Joe Cunningham?
Well, that, and also Tim Scott has the zones. So, reaching out to them. The part, Quintin, about research is that, first you have to get the product, and then you have to be able to do a demonstration project to show just how productive it is, and it all costs money, and it just means you got to have enough of the data and research in place so that you can finally make the pitch. We have been in contact. I know this project has been in contact with both of the senators, or senator and representatives office. It's just it's just trying to get some of this prioritized. So anyway, you just keep working.
And I know that you talk about that data and research. What are you looking at now?
With respect to what?
Your research with the sweet potato.
Well, I'm not. Right now I'm just on the advisory committee for this project, and we've been out to the farm to see how the sweet potatoes grow and how they get harvested, and there are jobs. The demonstration farm is just outside of Walterboro.
Sure.
And while I was there were, I think, six people from the community who had jobs that were related to this farm. So, I think if, that research is going on to develop the strains and varieties that will be really good with the biofuel production. So it has a lot of potential to give people jobs in these smaller rural communities.
Now, with those strains and varieties, what are you looking at exactly?
I'm not looking, I'm just trying to help, pave the way and help with, advisory part of it is, you know, have you thought of this? What do you think about that? Yeah, that looks good. Here's who might be has some interest in it. I've kind of stopped working on the project as we were campaigning, but
Right.
one of the things I did shortly before the campaign really has ramped up was to really look for grants, helping Janice with her work to find possible grants, people who are innovative and want to try some new things. So she's made some connections in California. Uh, there's um, there's a farm out there using the sweet potatoes produce vodka. So
Love sweet potato.
yeah, sweet potato vodka, and we had a chance to try it, and it was really good.
Oh,
It was
damn.
expensive. It was like, I don't know, $50 a bottle. So
Okay.
anyway, so there's lots of opportunities. You just have to find an investor or a granting agency that will help you move things forward. It's sometimes these things are harder and take longer time than we would want them to.
And I know something that you're very passionate about moving forward is education. And I know
Yes.
you also told the newspaper this in regards to obviously education. I think I just lost it. But let me talk to you about that. How should you move education forward right now in 2020?
Oh, wow. I mean, you know, well, one of the things that I said before we had the COVID virus is that we have to support our teachers. I mean, we're losing 7,000 teachers in South Carolina every year to attrition, and or they're moving, and we're only producing under 2,000 teachers in our universities. So we have to support our teachers, and part of it is teacher pay. We're way too low on teacher pay, and we have to strengthen our universities too. People have to have hope that if they get into teaching, that they're going to be able to make a living wage as a teacher. I mean, it really breaks my heart when, and we haven't been to a restaurant for the last 3 months, but it really breaks my heart when I've had to go to a restaurant and then find the waiter or waitress who's very friendly and interactive, and then find out their daytime job is teaching. And I think, as a teacher, I don't know how I would have been able to grade my papers and plan my lessons and reflect on, student learning and contact parents if I had to, work a second job while I was, teaching. So we have to address that, and of course, we need to lower class size. And one of the things that's happening now with COVID-19 is our students have been out of school for some 3 months, and that presents challenges. We've had, we've tried to use a distance learning model, but not all children have access to the equipment and the internet. So we have some real serious equity issues here. Um, and then teachers have been, working really hard. Not only are they preparing their distance learning, but children who couldn't do the distance learning have had to have packets of information, and then parents got to pick up the packets, and then they got to return the packets, and then the teachers have to grade them, and it just it's been complicated. And talking with students mainly, I've asked, I have grandkids who are in school, and, I've asked them, well, how is this distance learning working for you? And they're like, yeah, we get the work done. And then, we ride our bikes and we're working on, my kids like inventions. So they're, making, they're converting some bicycles into motors, and with motors and that kind of thing. But what they said was, they feel like mostly they've just had a lot of review. They don't feel like they've learned a lot of new content. So the challenge is going to be here is, what do we do now with education given COVID-19? And I'm sure you have seen that the numbers of cases have risen and the numbers are rising among young people. So the accelerated ed task force has put out a plan, and they have, like 3 models. One model is, we go back to school and, we do more cleaning or something. And then the other model is basically maybe we do alternative days. And then the third model is, we have to do distance learning. And right now, with the number of COVID cases going up, we're like, which model are we going to have to do? Because if the cases keep going up and people don't wear their masks and they don't social distancing, we're going to be in a state where it's not going to be safe to have large numbers of kids in a school at any one time. So that presents some real challenges. It's like what's happening out there with the virus, and then what models can we support, and which models do we choose, and then how do parents cope with if both parents are working, or you're one single family and you're working, how do you work with the children being at home, daycare being issue. I mean, it just kind of snowballs. So I'm like, please wear your mask, social distance. Let's see if we can't, bring the numbers down, because unless we bring the numbers down, it's going to be harder for us to get back to some sense of normality here.
And you talked obviously about equity issues. If I had a pie chart, Carol, and it says equity, equality, education, where should the common ground be with those issues right now?
Well, education is the foundation there. And so with equality and equity, you're trying to have equality so that you have quality across the field. But in terms of the equity, sometimes there are, not sometimes, but there are children who need additional resources and support. And that's the equity piece, is when you try to help people with what they need. So that's where the equality, equity. So I don't know, I guess, if I think about it, it's a balance of those two. You have to look at them both at the same time and meet the needs. Like, you have certain level of quality, but if students need more support, more mental health, more guidance, more math, intervention, whatever, that's where the equity piece comes in. And you just try to balance that out so that students get what they need to be supported, because if there's a stumbling block there, they can't move forward without it.
And why are there so many stumbling blocks when it comes to mental health issues?
Well, I don't know. It's part of it. We haven't recognized the importance, I guess, of mental health. When budgets are low, you're meeting class size, you're meeting the teachers, so you don't put in the number of guidance counselors that you really need. Here at James Island, you ask about, what do you know about the area? I was in a forum with teachers and students, and it was about mental health as it related to, drug education and the issues that young people are dealing with. So I asked, the high school here, well, how many guidance counselors do you have? And they said, well, we have one for each grade level. And so I said, well, is that adequate? And they said, no, we really need mental health people as well, and the students were talking about that as well. And so I said, well, how many mental health people do you have? And they said, well, we have one, and we actually need one at each grade level. So, here we are in suburban James Island, and our high school could use 3 more mental health, workers. So I think we're learning more and more about how mental health affects our society and the well-being of our students. So hopefully the consciousness is being raised that mental health is a need. It's not an embarrassment. It's just something that you deal with, because when you can deal with somebody struggling with mental health, you can get them back on a path to some normalcy, some kind of success that they're reaching for and are struggling with.
And you know, when you talk about education, you always talk about money. And I know in the newspaper article, you said this quote: the current funding for schools is based on the sales tax. And we know how uneven and unpredictable the sales tax is. And then Act 3888 removed taxes from owner occupied residences. And so the money comes from sales and property taxes on business and rental properties. Schools need a steady stream of funding, and we need to know what they are a couple years in advance to avoid programmatic changes. And Carol, let me ask you this. With COVID-19, how will funding for schools be impacted by low sales tax revenue?
Yeah, it's going to be impacted, and so, here's the thing. South Carolina's gotten $1 billion of money for COVID, to make up some difference with COVID-19. I don't know if it's enough. I mean, we'll see if it's enough. $1 billion is a lot of money, and I think what we need to do is, if we truly value education and know the importance that it is to our children, and it's a foundation, it should be a priority, then out of that $1 billion, we're going to have to allocate a lot of it to make up for the lost sales tax that would have gone to education. I know the superintendents have gone up to the state legislature and have said, at least give us what we had, this year. Don't cut us, because there are expenses that are going to be new dealing with COVID-19. I mean, just think about it. If the buses, because we need to social distance, can only carry half the kids at one time, it's going to cost more to make 2 runs than one run. So yeah, the sales tax is I think it's going to be impacted, and so we need to use the federal dollars in a wise way to support education, because we don't that's the foundation of our society. We can't short shrift that. But what I was also talking about, Quintin, there was in terms of the funding, we and I've seen models of this where we have to backtrack. We have too many streams of income going into education, so we don't really know how it all fits together. And so what we need to do now is, because we've had a lot of patchwork, let's do this, let's try that, and we're at a point now where we need to say, okay, how many students do we want in a class? How many teachers does that need? What are the special needs we have? How many guidance counselors do we want? What do we want nurses? And back into, based on policy and best practice, what is it going to cost? How much is it going to be? And allocate those funds and pull those many, many streams of income into meeting the needs that we know we need. So that we need some comprehensive education reform on the funding of schools. And I think there are models out there. The state has done it. We just need to have somebody in Columbia who will be that legislator to say, hey, we can do things differently, and these are the important things for teaching and learning.
How will you do that?
Well, I will do that by, I will definitely ask to be on the education committees. And if I'm not on the committees, I'll be informing the committees and going to the meetings and, showing, having those conversations that need to be made. And, the teachers have been incredible this past year with reaching out to other legislators to show them what they need, and I can be an ally to them.
You know, Carol, I'm sitting 2 blocks away from the John C. Calhoun statue here in downtown Charleston.
Mm-hmm.
What should a conversation be in Columbia about the John C. Calhoun statue, and of course, more importantly, the Heritage Act?
Yeah, right. Well, here's how I've thought about this. When we first moved to Charleston, I saw that statue. I thought, gosh, that's a huge statue in a park, and it stands really high. And I actually didn't know very much about that statue, what it meant. But then one day we took a tour and around Charleston, and the tour guides, when we passed that statue, talked about who John C. Calhoun was, what his background was. But the thing that struck me is what he said, what it meant to the Black community in Charleston. And he didn't, of course, he called it the Calhoun, John C. Calhoun monument, but he said the locals call it the Calhoun model because it represents slavery to them. And, I think, like, why would you want to have a monument that makes people feel so uncomfortable? So I think we need to rethink the Heritage Act. And I think this is when also home rule comes into place. When communities see something that's in their community that they find offensive to people in their community, they need to really think about how they want to address it. And so I'm really encouraged that our mayor and city council have really looked into the statue and are looking at another way to put it into its place in history.
Put it in a place of history. Where should that be?
I don't know, Quintin. I don't know. I mean, there's talk of a museum. There's talk about placing it, I don't know. But wherever it is placed, it could, maybe it would be at the African American Museum. I don't know. I think community people need to have that discussion about where would it be that we can put it in its place for history if we're going to keep it, and what are we going to say about it? I mean, it's the totality of a person's life that matters. So the good, the bad, and the reflection on that. So I don't know. I mean, let's if I get to be part of that discussion, I want to hear what other people think. I'd be curious to know what you think about it. Where would you put it?
Carol Tempel, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups. And I got to keep my comments to myself. I got,
I'm sure you have an opinion.
I got to feel. Yeah.
And it needs to be part of the conversation. So maybe not in this interview, but I think you'll find a way to put it into a conversation.
Well, thank you so much. And I hope to have you back on Quintin's Close-Ups again.
Well, I hope so too. I hope tomorrow is very successful for me. There's a lot of people rooting for me. I just feel really grateful. I mean, this is really pretty cool. One of my volunteers came by the other day to do some legwork, and he said, I want you to have this card, gift card. And I said, oh. And I said, where'd you get the gift card? And he said, I gave blood, and I'm giving you this card. So, this is the kind of endorsement that means something to me. So anyway, I think there's lots of people out there who are rooting for me, and if it's meant to be, it will be. And when I go to the State House, I will do my very best to represent the people, because I believe government should be of the people, by the people, and for the people.
Well, God's best to you, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, good, Quintin. Take care.
Likewise.